The person who makes you the angriest right now isn't showing you who they are. They're showing you what you've spent years refusing to look at in yourself. Most content on this topic will tell you that person is a mirror placed in your life for a spiritual reason. That's not what's happening. It's not a lesson from the universe. It's a misfire in your own attention. Carl Jung called this projection, and he described it in mechanical, almost technical terms. It is the unconscious transfer of a subjective psychic content onto an external object, your material, temporarily relocated onto someone else's face. Forget seeing what you want to see. That phrase makes projection sound like a preference, something you're choosing. It isn't a choice, it happens below the level where choice exists. Here's the actual mechanism. Somewhere inside you, there's a fragment, a trait, an impulse, a capacity, that your conscious identity has refused to claim. That fragment doesn't disappear just because you stop looking at it. It goes into what Jung called the unconscious, and unconscious material doesn't sit still. It needs an outlet, and the outlet it finds is other people. The fragment attaches itself to whichever external figure gives it the best fit, someone whose behavior, however slightly, resembles the disowned trait. Your mind then experiences that fragment as if it originates entirely outside you. This is why projection feels like perception instead of interpretation. You're not aware of adding anything. The trait appears to simply be there, in him, plainly visible. That's the core error to correct. The intensity of your reaction to another person is not proportional to how accurately you're seeing them. It's proportional to how much of your own material just got relocated onto them. Start with the negative version, because it's the one most people already sense but misname. You meet someone and something about them irritates you instantly and disproportionately, before they've done anything to actually warrant it. That intensity is the signature. A mild dislike is often just a mild dislike, but a visceral, oversized reaction is frequently a projection of a trait you've rejected in yourself. Say you find someone unbearably arrogant. If arrogance were simply a fact about them, it would produce mild disapproval, not a flare of anger that outlasts the conversation. The oversized reaction suggests something else, that arrogance, or the impulse toward it, exists somewhere in you too, and has been suppressed rather than resolved. You're not angry at them. You're angry at a version of yourself you've refused to acknowledge. This is what Jungian psychology calls shadow projection, the unconscious pushing its rejected material outward and attaching it to whoever is standing nearby with a plausible resemblance. It's mechanical, repeatable, and has nothing to do with the other person's actual character. This mechanism, the shadow depositing rejected material outward, was already introduced in this series. If you haven't seen that video, this is the same process, now applied specifically to how it distorts your view of other people. Now the version almost no one mentions, the golden shadow. Not everything you've disowned is negative. Some of it is positive material you were never allowed to claim. If you grew up in an environment where confidence, brilliance, or ambition was punished or ridiculed, you likely didn't destroy that capacity. You buried it, the same way you'd bury a trait considered shameful. That buried brilliance still needs somewhere to go, and it finds its outlet in idealization. You meet someone talented, and your admiration crosses a line from respect into something closer to reverence. That excess isn't really about them either. It's your own unclaimed capability, relocated onto a person who happens to be exhibiting a visible version of it. This is why intense admiration and intense resentment run on the exact same circuitry. Both are your unconscious material, temporarily housed in someone else, differing only in whether the material was rejected as bad or forbidden as too good. The practical cost of golden shadow projection is specific. As long as your own brilliance lives in someone else, you experience it as inspiration instead of capacity. You admire it in them while quietly excluding it from what you believe is available to you. Romantic attraction runs a related but distinct version of this mechanism, one already introduced earlier in this series under the anima and animus. That earlier breakdown covered why your type isn't really a preference, so we won't re-explain it here. What matters for this video is the shared mechanism. Whether the projection carries shadow material, golden material, or an animus image, the process is identical. Unconscious content exits the self and attaches to an external figure who then gets treated as though the content originated there. That's the single unifying claim underneath every version of projection covered so far. Different content, same delivery system, your unconscious placing itself outside your own boundaries and calling it perception. And that delivery system doesn't stop after one use. It runs again, on the next person, with the same mechanical indifference to who they actually are. This explains a pattern almost everyone recognizes but rarely names correctly. The same relationship dynamic, with a completely different partner. New person, new face, new history, and somehow, the exact same conflict shows up again. The common explanation is, you have a type, or, you keep choosing the wrong people. Both explanations put the responsibility on selection, as if the problem is who you're picking. The mechanical explanation is less comfortable and more accurate. The projection was never withdrawn. The unconscious material is still active, still looking for an external attachment point, and it will find one in almost anyone who offers a plausible surface. Withdrawal is the technical term for what has to happen instead, and it means reclaiming the projected content as your own rather than someone else's trait. Until that happens, changing partners changes the screen, not the projector. This is also why "they were never who you thought" is the wrong conclusion to draw from a failed relationship. It quietly blames the other person for not living up to an image you built and placed onto them without their consent or knowledge. The more accurate statement is blunter. You were reacting to your own unclaimed material, and the specific person carrying it was mostly incidental to that reaction. Swap them for someone else with a similar surface, and the same pattern resumes almost immediately. So here's the practical question: how do you actually catch this while it's happening, in real time, without a therapist's office or weeks of reflection? It starts with tracking reaction size instead of reaction content. The moment you notice a response that feels disproportionate to the situation, anger that outlasts the trigger, admiration that borders on reverence, irritation that returns every time you see this person, that disproportion is the signal. Ask one specific question in that moment: what is this reaction actually about, if it's not entirely about them? Not, are they wrong, but, what does this reaction assume about me? Then name the trait explicitly, out loud or in writing, without attaching it to the other person's name. If you were furious at their arrogance, write arrogance, not his arrogance, or her arrogance. Now ask where that trait exists in your own history, even in a small, denied, or long abandoned form. Most people find it faster than expected, because the material was never actually gone, only unclaimed. This isn't about excusing someone else's genuinely bad behavior. Projection doesn't mean the other person did nothing. It means your reaction size is unreliable evidence about how much they actually did. Run this check consistently and the pattern starts to weaken on its own. Not because the world changes, but because the projected material has somewhere to return to instead of somewhere new to land. None of this requires believing in mirrors, soul lessons, or spiritual initiation. It requires accepting that your emotional reactions are frequently reporting on your own unconscious contents, mislabeled as reports about someone else. The person who angered you at the start of this video, the one you thought was showing you exactly who they are, reconsider that. What they most likely triggered was material you'd already buried, using their behavior as nothing more than a convenient surface. That reframe doesn't make the other person irrelevant to your life. It makes them irrelevant to the specific reaction, which is a much smaller, much more useful claim than the sweeping verdicts projection usually gets credited with. If this changed how you think about the people who trigger or idealize you, subscribe for the rest of this series on Jung's model of the unconscious mind. And if you want to see the other half of this mechanism, go back and watch how the persona, the mask projection itself depends on to keep working, was built in the first place.